I'm going to start actually with a basic question about sort of the process and the problem. And Jeff, if you can sort of start out by explaining, in terms of the kinds of things you do, Chainsaw does a whole lot of productions of all different types for all different customers. What's the basic process for creating and delivering a program on file, or perhaps I should say files, as in plural?
Well, the whole thing these days is a lot of folks want all sorts of different deliverables. So currently, what we have to do is we have to dump tape, possibly 2398 for a domestic or an international master, cross-convert that to another tape to turn that into a domestic master at 5994, then capture those two into files on a Final Cut or a KeyPro or something, and at that point, then I can make other deliverables, say H.264s or certain DVD screeners that people want. The difficulty is to get to the end of the process. Two things. One, someone comes along and says, we've got a credit fix, which it's really easy to punch into the tape, but then you have to recapture all those files, hours worth of time, basically to create the two new digital intermediate masters. Or someone comes along and says, we've got some VFX we need to punch in.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to break in there right there, because I kind of wanted to jump to Terry for some of the sort of typical issues before we do that. So basically what you're saying is a typical process is you've got this content that is existing in a nonlinear system, you're exporting it out to tape, and then from tape you're creating more files, and then kind of doing that whole cross-check process, and then eventually sending them out of the house. So,
correct.
Terry, AlphaDogs is all about finishing. Of all different types of programs for different customers. What kind of problems come up in this whole phenomenon, and what are we dealing with?
Yeah, well, in the traditional workflow, what would happen is we'd output to a tape, we'd QC the tape, we'd make any additional delivery guns or clones from that tape, and then that is what gets delivered. And if the network comes along later and goes, you know what, we want to change this person's title in their lower third, you get the tape back, you do a few inserts, QC those little sections, then the tape back. I mean, it's that simple to do. With a file-based delivery, you have to export the file. Let me back up a step. One of the things is while getting off the tape, you can be looking at your output in confidence mode from the return from the text, and you know what's going on the tape. So now you have the file base, you have to export the file. Now you have to watch it because you don't know what actually came out. You can't see it while it's happening. It has to be QC'd, the multiple passes through. And then, of course, we deliver it. And technically, if we're uploading it or whatever, it should be QC'd again when it gets to the other end. But that's a separate issue. If the network comes along and says, okay, we want to change that lower third, well, we have to go back into the system, change the lower thirds, and then re-export the file, re-watch the file, all the QC passes, et cetera, all over again. So all of that starts accumulating. Now, with the Cinedeck ability to go and just punch in, it's going to give us the simplicity of the older workflow that we used to have with tape.
So, Jeff, in terms of that process that Terry is describing, what you described, I mean, if we're talking like an hour show, so 58 minutes or whatever, whatever the typical actual runtime is for an hour program, how long does this whole process take? I mean, you've got this finished program in your nonlinear system. Presuming no issues of having to fix things, how long does it take to actually just get to the end of this process of having actual files that you feel confident about sending out? And then how much time are we talking about to sort of fix things when things go wrong?
Well, with the full QC pass, you're talking about 4 to 5 hours from the point at which you've finished your tape master or your original master. If you've got a fix, you punch that fix in again, and then you have to repeat the entire 4 to 5 hours because you have to QC the whole file again because it's not just a part of the file that is new. The whole file is brand new. Every time you have to recreate something, it's a whole brand new file. And with the QC pass, 4 to 5 hours worth of fun.
So basically you're talking about an entire day's worth of work of multiple people.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so obviously there's some sort of limitations in the nonlinear realm, and it's really nice to have all the flexibility, but that whole output side can be a bit of a challenge. Just to kind of get a little bit of curiosity, or just out of curiosity, obviously different customers and particularly different regions of the world have different preferences in terms of what they want to receive. But here in the States, what is pretty much the most common deliverable that you find most customers, or deliverables, I guess I should say, that most customers want to receive?
Well, fortunately, we're still delivering a lot of tape, which is good. But some of them are tape and digital files, and then there are some networks that only want digital files. And the most common right now is ProRes, unfortunately.
That's what we're seeing as well.
Unfortunately, because.
Oh, that was a leading question. Okay. Well, just because ProRes is, here's another thing about tape. I could take my HDCAM SR tape and I could put it in any deck anywhere on the planet Earth, and the same image comes out. I can take a ProRes file and I can play it in 3 different programs on the same computer and see 3 different things.
Yeah, okay. And so are there any other issues that we need to sort of be considering looking at in terms of this process of delivering files?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that's been, it has been a good thing for tape has always been the ability to, you send it to the audio house, they punch in the audio, and they make sure it's all in sync because they're seeing what they need to see. You can't do that currently, with a ProRes file recorded on a KeyPro. You can't just hand it to them and say, here, give me the audio. They have to export as stems and try to put it all together and have a nonlinear edit system play it back to check sync, and they end up with a much messier process than just punching into a tape like they're used to.
Well, actually, speaking of audio, what is a typical quantity of audio tracks that need to be delivered? And I guess more importantly, if it's more than the 16, how do you go about doing that?
Well, you begin playing around in Final Cut Pro or QuickTime 7 Pro Editor. Both pieces of software that are a good 7 to 8 years old now and completely left behind by the developers. So you're having to add in all this stuff and then go back and try to make sure that it's playing back correctly. And a lot of times you can't necessarily see those tracks either once you start trying to play them back.
All right. I would like to, just for about a couple of minutes, throw out and see if anybody has any questions that they want to put in here. And you can send that question either by the chat or just speak up on the phone. But if we can try to do it one at a time, there's quite a few people connected.
Yeah, why are you guys still going to tape?
For us, it's a network deliverable. There's still a lot of networks that want tape-based delivery. If you think about it, if you give them a file-based delivery, what do they do to archive that? They put it on tape. I mean, granted, it's probably an LTO tape, but still, it's the safest archive format. So I'm assuming that's why we still get those delivery requests. And I'm fine with it's a much easier workflow.
Well, true. So are you still running it through a hardware legalizer when you're putting that out to tape?
Yes, which saves a big step also. And that's another advantage we're looking at with the Cinedeck is that we can run through the hardware legalizer to the file.
Right. Now, in the case of DCI, they're not requiring tape anymore. So do you foresee that the tape decks are going to go away, or we're going to be stuck with a bunch of door stops that cost $100,000 plus?
Well, I'm not buying any new tape decks, if that's what you're asking me.
Neither am I.
Do you mind shooting me a copy of that? If you're somewhere where you can.
All right. I'm going to take 2 more questions off the text, and then we're going to kind of keep on going forward. In terms of the technology and sort of how this all works, I'll be getting into that after this little roundtable discussion, so we can sort of talk about a little more of the detail about how the whole process works. In terms of the sort of QC, these files have been run through several systems, and we'll be talking about that as well. Terry and/or Jeff, I do have one question about: do you have any experience or thoughts on software options for delivering files?
Software options for QCing files, or for actually delivering them?
For really creating all the deliverables.
Well, we use unset dailies actually for some of our deliverables that are 23976. There's various transcoders that are out there. The difficulty is you have to capture it and then re-export it. So it's not the file you get in the intermediate while after you've captured. It's not the file you're going to be kicking out, necessarily making you a ProRes right off the bat. You have to do some tweaks after that point.
Okay. Any more questions for Terry and Jeff? And otherwise, I'm going to continue on and actually get into some of the technology. I've got a couple of ways to do that.
Wow.
That was interesting sounding.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty much most of the questions I'm seeing on the chat are really about the process of using the Cinedeck technology for this insert editing. We'll get into those momentarily. So, Terry, Jeff, thank you very much. Obviously you're welcome to stick around. It would be great if you can come back. If you do need to get off and do some other stuff, which I totally understand, I will send you a message a little bit towards the end where we're going to do a little more Q&A. And so maybe we'll hear from you then, or maybe not.
That sounds good. I'll try to hop back on.
Very good.
Same here.
Keep on going. And thank you much.
Okay. Talk to you later.